Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for Infoblox's Reporting and Analytics Tech Demo Series as we showcase the critical DNS, DHCP, and IPAM reports for next level protocol management. Thanks again for everyone to join. So let's get started. My name is Bob Rose. I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager for Infoblox DDI Value Added Services. I'm located in our Tacoma, Washington Center of Excellence, and I'll be moderating our discussion today. And with me is Craig Shukar, one of Infoblox's leading pre-sales system engineers, also located in Tacoma. Welcome, Craig.
Hi, Bob. How are you doing today?
Doing great. So as we get started, and to kick things off, when it comes to the network, visibility and reporting is absolutely critical for managing protocols, including DNS, DHCP, and IPAM. You know, companies really need real-time access to summarized and granular data to really know what's going on across their networks. And fortunately, with Infoblox Reporting and Analytics integrated with the Infoblox Grid, we can address a number of issues that arise. And so as we get started, why don't we go ahead and take a look at today's agenda. We will be sharing with you today some business initiatives, some of the challenges and overview. We'll also be talking about core network services. We're going to spend a few moments discussing query logging. We'll also be talking about simplified, cost-effective deployment. And then we'll get into really what the highlight of today's presentation is about, the most requested DNS, DHCP, and IPAM reports. And then we'll do a wrap-up in terms of open questions and other information that you might like to get. So from that point, let's go ahead and jump into the next slide, Craig. And as we get started here, you know, one of the key issues that we come across is how companies manage across various business initiatives, and this includes audit and compliance. For example, how easy is it to track and report on what's happened over time? Is that something that's easy? Is it something difficult? If any of you have been through that, we certainly know that an instant audit or a compliance check can bring some stress. And how easy would it be to just get access to that information at your fingertips? Also, we look at issues around app uptime and performance. Is DDI really impacting application availability and performance? If there is a problem happening now with an application, typically the network is the first to get blamed. And how easily can you identify DNS or DHCP issues that are impacting your application availability? Another area, of course, is security, and that's a huge area, especially around where the existing DNS security vulnerabilities and impacted devices might be. It's absolutely critical to be aware, not only in terms of threats that might be coming into your network, but how do you mitigate those threats? And so if you know what's happening in the immediate time frame, you're able to quickly address those issues. And then, of course, looking forward, what about capacity planning? Since DNS and DHCP are really so critical to the network, identifying when current capacity may not meet future requirements can be a tedious and error-prone process, especially if you're using spreadsheets. And fortunately, Infoblox has algorithms in play that can help you manage that process. So those are some of the key initiatives looking over time that reporting and analytics can address. So today we're going to really focus on the most requested DDI reports to give you a better insight on your network and help you make better decisions, respond quicker to threats, better manage your resources. So let's see a little bit more about what you're up against. So in the area of audit and compliance, visibility into historical core DNS data is absolutely critical. You can slice and dice graphs, pie charts, drill down into HTTP details, ingest feeds from best-in-breed partners, and centralize security views all in one solution. In addition, on the app availability and performance side, you can certainly measure and view all the DDI detail. Perhaps you want to look at the core network services supporting the business critical apps, so those are absolutely essential. Security, of course, is around visibility into your core DNS data and being able to find root cause problems much more quickly. And then, of course, as I just mentioned, capacity planning, looking forward into what your needs will be in the future and eliminating that guesswork. All of that is contained in the Infoblox reporting and analytics. Craig, there's also query logging, right? I mean, there's a lot of opportunity there. Can you maybe walk us through a little bit around some of the advantages that are available through query logging?
Well, query logging is something that a lot of the security teams are very interested in. What it provides is kind of detailed data on the footprints of where a endpoint device has gone over the network or outside of your network. So query logging can provide some very detailed information for security when they're doing some forensics analysis after an event, or if they're trying to pinpoint some device that has shown some indicators of compromise. Query logging can help understand the how bad the potential infection could be, right? By looking at who the other endpoints that one infected device may have communicated with. Also, audit and compliance purposes, security audit logging. We can see who logged on from what device, if there's been any changes to the network, were they authorized, who made those changes, that sort of thing. And as well as historical data. So we can look at past details of the network, following those footprints again from a device, where did it go over a period of time in the past up to the present.
Yeah, that's really good. So Craig, on the next slide, we're taking a look at an overview really of reporting and analytics. So what is it? Well, of course, this is full real-time DNS-based search dashboards, reports. There are alerts, there's analytics. All of that's delivered to you in a single pane of glass. In fact, there's actually over 100 pre-built customized dashboards and reports that span a whole variety of different topics specific to your network. Could be security, delivers visibility and control. We're going to actually highlight some of that for you today. We're also going to jump into an example, some query logging, especially for troubleshooting, forensics, audit, and compliance. So again, that's made up of what is included in reporting and analytics. There's also the security ecosystem data sharing advantage that you get for fast threat detection and remediation. Those are all real benefits that you can realize even today. And of course, reporting and analytics is quick, it's seamless, it's plug and play, it's very easy to deploy. Craig, how does it work?
Well, so the reporting and analytics member is exactly that. It's a grid member. It's a separate appliance, but it plugs right into the grid, right? You add it similarly how you add other members. And since Infoblox has a very deep understanding of DNS, plus we understand what our data structures are, we are able to provide, the pre-built reports to provide that data that you'd like to look at, right? We automatically collect the data. You don't have to go out and figure out what data you need to collect. We know what the data structures are. We grab it for you, we index it, and we populate the reports. So, this is built off of the Splunk Enterprise Engine. It's dedicated to the Infoblox DNS, DHCP, and IP address database information. And because of that, we're able to leverage the visualizations in the Splunk engine as well as some of the other capabilities from that Splunk product. Again, since we know what our data structures are and we understand how DNS and DHCP work, we are able to optimize the query logging. DNS queries generate a lot of data. If you were to build this on your own on a Splunk engine, there's just tons of log and event information that comes out. Since we understand it, we're able to parse it and categorize it and filter it quite efficiently, effectively, to provide a very rich query logging experience for you. And then again, with the Splunk Enterprise Engine, it's got built-in alerting and report distribution. We just leverage that. So you can easily distribute reports to stakeholders that are interested in certain data, or just specific people in your team that ask for that data.
So thanks, Craig. So for those that are on the call today, what's in it for me? Well, what reporting and analytics gives you actually is the automated instant updates for quick threat discovery and resolution. That is a huge advantage. Also, it gives you full reliable network visibility for better decision making. That's really a key advantage. The sooner you can see the information, the faster you can make decisions about it. In addition, we talked a little bit about audits already, but to be able to get historical data going back several years is a real advantage. And to get that information really with just a few keystrokes is really an advantage for not only managing audits, but ensuring compliance. And then of course, as Craig just mentioned, saving time and effort is really a key. You don't have to actually spin up a new project to get this data. You don't have to rely on other folks to be providing you with data. It saves you time and effort, and it gives you your forecasting ability as well, because we have access to the historical data, because we have Infoblox's rich algorithms and predictive analytics. So one other thing that you get, of course, is the ability to share critical DDI data with the ecosystem and the community. So these are some real advantages as you consider reporting and analytics. Craig, now as we take a look at how reporting and analytics works across the network, it really delivers next level visibility. Can you walk us through a little bit and tell us how this is deployed, how it works?
Okay, so in this image we see on the slide, that's kind of the base dashboard in our reporting appliance view. So it gives you, you see the visualizations here. It gives you some rich data, information about queries per second, information about leases per second compared to the previous day's activity. Also, one of the bar charts there shows you the types of devices that are on the network. The horizontal bar charts kind of give you statistical data with regard to IP address utilization per network, right? Which is critical data for network engineers as they're planning to, maybe they're deploying new application servers or people are requesting IP addresses from them. We provide reports on DNS activity and performance. Again, that kind of top view of numbers up there is queries per second, leases per second, as well as you can drill down and look at top queries by client or what network is generating, which domain is generating the most traffic. DHCP activity and performance, IP address management, what's the status of a network that needs to be provisioned, how many IP addresses are available to be provisioned on a specific network, and then security, going back to query logging, what are the footprints of a specific device throughout the network? Where did this network go? What subnet is this network on? What's the MAC address? What switch is it connected to? What switch port is it connected to on that switch? That's very useful data to hand off to your security team as they do some analysis, or if they're doing some forensics after action reports, right? After an event. Besides providing good information around the Infoblox DNS and DHCP system, since it is our system, we know those event logs, but a lot of organizations have heterogeneous DNS infrastructure. We're able to provide very good data reports based on the events from the Microsoft DNS and DHCP servers as well. It's much easier to get to those reports from the Infoblox side than parsing through a Microsoft event log, which make it much more simpler and easier. Again, with regard to security, we provide that rich IP address management data that can be shared with the security ecosystem, whether it's a SIEM solution or some other sandbox data. We can provide some useful information on threat insights if you're leveraging some of our other security products as well. And then the network task automation, as I mentioned previously, provisioning networks with the status of provisioning a network, who has the rights to provision the networks, and how many IP addresses are available. In addition, another key element of IP address management is discovering devices. So we work very closely with hypervisors on the market, whether it's VMware or Microsoft or OpenStack. You can do virtual discovery of all your VMs within your hypervisor. Find out the IP address, and we can also provide provisioning and deprovisioning, so you recover those IP addresses if you have an organization that's very heavy in DevOps and they're creating and destroying VMs quite rapidly. We can connect to several different orchestrators to help automate that provisioning and recovery of IP addresses. And then for the physical devices on your network, the layer 2 and layer 3 discovery, we can communicate to routers and switches and firewalls. We can identify the specific make and model of those devices, the IP addresses they're using, what's connected to them, more importantly, right? So to get a full 360 view of what's on your network, doesn't matter whether it's a Windows desktop, whether it's an Internet of Things metering device on a manufacturing floor or in a hospital, it's an IP phone or an IP camera. We can identify it, and we provide all that rich information within the IP address, and then you can database, and then we can report on it. How many devices are on my network, of what type, of what type. I can get that data in the reports.
Thanks for sharing that, Craig. So ensuring that your applications and your infrastructure are highly available, that they're scalable, and also have a proven disaster recovery plan in place is absolutely essential. But with Infoblox, it's not a one-size-fits-all type scenario. Each organization, of course, requires its own unique solution to meet its needs. And so, Craig, what we're talking about now is some different scalability models that might be interesting to our customers and certainly to those on the call today, to see how do we actually scale, how do we provide high availability and disaster recovery. Can you provide some insight about how we address this through the various nodes that are available?
Certainly. So no matter what your recovery point objectives are, the Infoblox Reporting Analytics solution can help meet those needs. From the smallest organization that needs the rich reporting, but maybe being able to just provide a backup of the appliance is all they need because the recovery point objective isn't as stringent. A single appliance might be all that they need. For other organizations that have stricter requirements around RPO, we can set up a high availability appliance where we use virtual router redundancy protocol. So if the active node starts acting up for any reason, it'll fail over under 3 seconds to the secondary node in that HA pair. And that'll make sure that your reporting and information is available for anybody on the network. If you need to scale up for performance purposes, you can set up multiple indexing heads or search heads so you can get faster performance. And in this diagram, I see 4 nodes. So let's say that there's 2 search heads, and each search head is an HA pair. So in an HA pair within the grid, we look at an HA pair as a single entity. So we can have say this is 2 search nodes. Each search node is set up in an HA pair for high availability and also performance. And then if you do need geo-redundancy disaster recovery, we can expand that way as well. You can expand, scale out, we can scale up. So depending on what your requirements are around high availability and disaster recovery, we can work with you to determine what is the best configuration to meet your needs.
Yeah, that's really good, Craig. So as we look forward to the next slide, we get a bit of insight around subscription licensing. So this is what's available currently in terms of both virtual appliances and physical appliances. We do have subscription licensing, which is a key focus. There's a lot of value built in here in terms of making it simple and cost effective. Craig, what are some additional insights that you might be able to share around our subscription licenses?
Well, just kind of reiterate on the designing based on what your requirements are. So besides, HA requirements, there's also capacity requirements and performance requirements. So we have 4 different size appliances on the virtual size, as well as the physical appliances. As you see, we've got the 805 all the way up to the 5005 on the virtual, and then on the physical, 805 to the 4005. And those, they generally map one-to-one as far as the virtual appliance 805 has the same resource, CPU, memory, hard disk requirements as the physical device. And so we do provide subscriptions for each layer and those for each appliance, but there's also, since it's built off of Splunk, there's also data licensing requirements. So Splunk requires indexing, is licensed based on indexing. So we provide different levels of licensing based on the amount of indexing capacity you require. We do have a free tier, which is capped at 500 megabytes a day. It's really good for small organizations or just evaluating to check out if this reporting appliance is going to meet your needs or has the reporting that you like. But we can go all the way up to 500 gigabytes a day capacity. So that's for larger organizations. They got multiple teams that are running reports. They've got a lot of data to index, they're doing a lot of query logging, that sort of thing. The subscription can be either annual or up to a 3-year term. And then lastly, the virtual appliance does have a free activation for you.
And that's a real advantage to have free activation on that virtual appliance. It's a great way to save some money as well. So thanks, Craig, for sharing that. Why don't we take a look at some deployment now? It's fairly simple, right? It's very cost effective. So we have, some real advantages around this in terms of its simplicity and clustering, as well as those licensing options as well. So Craig, can you walk us through this a little bit and give us some insight as to how it's deployed?
Certainly. So a reporting and analytics appliance is just another member on the grid. It's fairly easy to add a grid member from the administrator web console. You create the member that you're going to add. Essentially, it's a container. You give it the name that you're going to use, the IP address that you're going to use for that new device. And then from the Infoblox support portal, you can select the license that you've activated and activate the license key from the support portal. Then you copy that key down into the web console, admin console on the grid. And then you log into the command line for the appliance, and then you enter the IP address, the name of the grid you're going to join, the virtual IP address for the grid master, and the shared secret, and that's about it. You're off to the races. And then the last thing I should mention, so that once the reporting server is joined to the grid, there's a couple of other things that you need to do within the web console. You need to specify the type of data that you want to index. So that is something that you want to think about ahead of time. Do I want query logging, or do I just want to look at DNS statistics and DHCP statistics? Also, if you're using some of the other Microsoft products around security, there's different security events that you might want to index as well, because that'll light up additional reports to the reporting appliance. And then if you are doing query logging, we highly recommend using the data connector, which it's free if you're using the reporting and analytics engine. This data connector actually helps reduce the network bandwidth that's leveraged or used for query logging. It does a much more efficient job of capturing the data from the grid and sending it over to the reporting and analytics engine, as well as if you wanted to share some of that events with some of your other tools in your security ecosystem. For instance, the data connector can help connect and pass that data over to those other applications.
All right, well, why don't we go ahead and take a little bit deeper dive now into query logging to give you a sense for that. So really one of the things that we touched on earlier was security forensics. So in this case, you might have a use case where a system was compromised in the last week, and you want to know what other systems perhaps it's communicated with. So query logging can give you that granular data that really goes beyond just getting really nice summarized reports. You can actually get down into the deep DNS data to see exactly what's going on. Craig, what are some thoughts that you have around this particular component of query logging?
Well, yeah, this is very valuable for security forensics team. So if you look at this report here, you see the source IP address, which, from the filters up top, you can specify specific client. You can also specify the time frame I want to look at. Do I want to do it the last week? Do I want to go the last 2 weeks, the last month or 2 months? And then you'll see the domains that that endpoint had gone to and the type of query that it was requesting, right? And then which DNS server it actually went through. So this is all very, very valuable information for the security teams, right? So we don't just give you a summary view. If you have other tools in your security tools in your environment, you can do some comparison to understand if these domain names are actually associated with malware sites or botnet sites or phishing sites and that sort of thing. Or if Infoblox does have our threat insight, and if you subscribe to our security tools, you can quickly identify which sites are bad sites, and then you can associate them and block them within the environment as well.
And this is really helpful for root cause analysis too, because instead of spending, minutes to hours, trying to dig deep into Excel data or other CSV-based data, you can quickly go to the information that you need using query logging. Another use case that we see is around access logging and audit and compliance. So one use case that comes up quite frequently is what clients do we have that are actually querying Facebook? And so that's a challenge for some organizations. And so you get a chance to see, who queried what was queried by whom. It's fast, it's easy, it's visibility into who's doing what on the network. Craig, what about audit and compliance? What the use case there, of course, is around what specific client has queried in terms of their search activity. What are some thoughts that you could share on that?
Well, so audit and compliance, as I mentioned previously, if you have system configuration changes occurred, you can go back and find out who was logged on to that specific device that was responsible for making the change. So you can ensure that those changes were made in a orderly fashion, whether you met with the change configuration logs approval or that sort of thing. You can easily understand what devices are accessing what domains. If you have restrictions on websites and domains that you don't want your end users or population to going to, you can easily see if there's any violations around that. Also, with regard to query logging, it's a very large data set. And again, as I pointed out earlier, we got these filters up top, so you can easily parse through that data to filter it down and restrict it and make it smaller or focus in on specifically what you're looking at. Hey, Bob, we got a couple questions in the chat I'd like to address, if you don't mind.
Let's do that.
So first one from David Johnson is, what was required for this report beyond the base reporting appliance? Actually, nothing. These are these two reports we just showed are out of the box reports. The query logging, the domains queried by client doesn't require anything beyond the reporting and analytics appliance. And then Walter Henderson asks, if his users go to Microsoft DNS first before hitting Infoblox recursive DNS, how can I see the end user IP address? Well, for query logging, there's a couple, well, we won't be able to get this query logging data directly. However, if we use our data connector license or data connector to communicate with our security products. So if you subscribe to one of our security Active Trust, for instance, Active Trust Cloud, the data connector actually, as it extended DNS0 appendage to the IP address so we can actually see that. And another way might be if you use our DNS forwarding proxy, which actually would probably be better. And that you could point the Windows DNS server to this DNS forwarding proxy, we would be able to capture that IP address. For query logging, it's a little more complicated, but if you just wanted to see IP addresses on the network from Microsoft, our Network Insight product, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, it is an additional solution that does level 2, level 3 IP address discovery. So you'll be able to get all the IP address information from all the devices on your network.
All right, that's good. Thank you to David and to Walter for those questions. We appreciate that. So Craig, as we look forward as well, in terms of granular visibility, one of the other advantages with this is, of course, being able to see a lot greater detail. And so the graphic that you see there is on the per half hour basis. So you could really pinpoint on-demand pre-built or customized reports because we have date and timestamp accuracy. You also have the ability to see data as needed from summarized to more granular visibility. And of course, this is automated, so you don't have a significant resource hit on your CPU, your memory, or disk. So that's one way to look at the data. But Craig, there's also a much more granular way to look at it as well.
Right. So you can, again, with those filters, you can reduce the time frame, so you can get a more granular view of the activity that's actually going on. And as Bob mentioned, these are pre-built reports for the most part. The data is already in there. You're just reconfiguring that specific view of the data and using the Splunk visualizations engine to get a better granular or more granular view of that data. There's over 100 pre-built reports that come with the basic reporting and analytics engine, and you can do some customization quite easily. Whether it's just changing the time frame, or if you know some Splunk language, you can actually make a copy of the reports and Splunk create Splunk queries to your heart's content.
Thanks, Craig. So what we want to do now is just give you a little bit of a lead in to our reports that we're going to share with you. So one of the key advantages that Infoblox delivers with reporting analytics is free access to pre-built reports. I mean, this is way easier than doing it yourself. One of the big questions we get asked, right, Craig, is, why would we purchase reporting analytics if we already have a reporting engine like Splunk? But if you're already using Splunk, you really understand the value of detailed visibility and tracking. So what Infoblox does is really takes it up to the next level. Infoblox has integrated data collection, as Craig mentioned, with Splunk, so you can take advantage of all of the powerful customization and visualization options that are there. But there's a big difference in terms of what Infoblox adds. First of all, we give you access to data that's just not available with other tools. We built the best collection capabilities with tight integrations with the DDI platform, so you have access to information that really no one else gets. And then in addition to that, we have a centralized data archival methodology that uses grid technology. So that really gives you the most comprehensive data collection with a minimal amount of indexing required. In fact, Infoblox Reporting and Analytics actually can use less indexing, which means less cost than Splunk itself. Also, instead of requiring your team to figure out which data to collect and attempt to validate it and build reports, Infoblox has already done all of that for you. We've also added algorithms and predictive analytics that no other platform provides. So that really takes the guesswork out of doing your resource planning and analysis. And finally, as Craig mentioned, there's over 100 reports and dashboards with the ability through Splunk to customize hundreds of thousands of others, really, if you needed to. Instead of trying to figure out what reports might be possible, you can just take a look, leverage the base of reports that we have and customize based on your needs. So even though Infoblox uses Splunk under the hood, the key differences really give you a massive advantage over a do-it-yourself model. So let's take a look and look at some of the categories. So there's predictive reports and dashboards. We have device, DHCP, DNS, ecosystem, internal reports, IPAM reports, security, DTC reports, that's our load balancing solution. There are system and appliance, audit, and cloud reports. All of these, again, as we've mentioned, there's over 100 engineered, integrated, pre-built, customized dashboards and reports. So it's going to give you the information that you need very quickly. So without further ado, Craig, why don't we jump in to the top DDI reports. The first one we'd like to share with you is the IPAM inventory report. And this really speaks to audit and compliance, but also app uptime and performance, as well as security. Craig, can you tell us a little bit more about this report?
Right. So, this is going to, tell you what's on the network. What IP addresses, what device has the network, that IP address, what network is associated with. We discover the history when it was last seen, when and how it was discovered. Is it a DHCP lease or is it a fixed address? It can help you with troubleshooting issues. And another big request that I hear from network administrators is people are always asking what IP addresses are available, or how many IP addresses do we have? Managers are usually asking that when they're doing some planning. So let me show you what this looks like within the grid. This is IPAM inventory. So within the reporting and analytics environment, we've got our home dashboard. This is what you saw on that one slide earlier. And this is the dashboard. All these little widgets in here are basically reports that you can add. So you can modify the dashboard to your heart's content as well, to put what views you like. Whatever dashboard you make create as an administrator, you can share it with the rest of the organization, or it could just be your own, right? So you can create your own custom views based on the information that you're interested in, and your coworker can create his own views. Now we have a list of the dashboards, and then there's also reports. So reports are standalone reports of the data, and in most of the cases there's a dashboard that goes along with it. The dashboard usually has some filters that allow you to parse the data quickly. So if we take a look at, IP inventory, address inventory, if you did want to make a change to any of the reports or dashboards, it's really easy to do. To make a copy of it, you go over to this edit selection or section, and then select clone and give it a different name, right? So you clone it, and then you're able to make changes to it. This will give you a list of all the IP addresses, when it was discovered, when it was first seen, when it was last seen, the network view that it's associated with. So in Infoblox, you can have multiple network views. Within each network view or different DNS zones. You can identify what the management platform was. And then you can download it. You can look at it, export it as a PDF file, or you could print it off, right? Now, if you wanted to subscribe to this information, the Splunk engine allows you to subscribe and distribute automatically. The dashboards don't provide the ability to do that, but if you go to the reporting section for this specific, report, as I mentioned, most of the reports have associated dashboards. If we go to the IP address inventory, you'll notice the report's very similar. It's just missing the filters that are on top. We can customize the time for this. On the report view, you'll get the total summary of IP addresses, but then you can also schedule this to be delivered. Like I mentioned, that there's a lot of organizations have told me that, hey, other managers and other departments are always asking how many IP addresses they have. Well, they can easily run this report on a weekly basis. They can send an email to those stakeholders that are interested in it, attach it as a PDF, or they can, inline table, attach it as a CSV file, whatever they would format they need it in. And then, they don't have to worry about doing the research for them for that request anymore. It's automatically assigned and shipped to those end users.
Yeah, that's really good. All the filters make it so easy, right, Craig? And then just being able to distribute those so that you get access to that information without even necessarily going in and having to call up the report every time is a real advantage. Let's look at number 4. So this is the inactive IP address report, and this is really around audit and compliance, but also capacity planning. The case here would be if an admin has to access unused network IP addresses for a current use, like you want to redeploy those that are not being used currently, or future resource planning, which ones are inactive, when were they last used, and can they be reclaimed for a current deployment? So Craig, what about this one? Maybe we can just quickly touch on this as we have a few more to show as well.
So this report does require additional licensing. It requires our Network Insight product because it's going out and doing a more deeper, richer discovery of the network. So the inactive IP addresses does require the Network Insight appliance. It'll go out and discover the IP addresses, what's talking to the switches, what's connected to the switches. If it can't find it on the network, it'll compare with what's in the DHCP and DNS database and say, hey, this guy's inactive. So this allows you to recover those IP addresses when there's new projects coming up to add an application server to a specific network, you can reclaim the IP addresses and assign them to the appropriate server or to new servers or new projects that are coming up, right? Just gives you better visibility into your network on what's being used and what is not being used.
Yeah, and that's super helpful to have that. How about report number 3? So this is an interesting one, right? This is the device interface inventory, again, addressing audit compliance and app uptime and performance. So the use case here is that if an admin has to take inventory of device interfaces, where would you go? Would you go to spreadsheets? With this solution, you could certainly quickly identify a troubled device and find out what interface that it's using, and perhaps there might be other devices that have the same interface. Are those also having issues? So this is an interesting report as well, right, Craig?
Yeah, and again, this one does require the Network Insight Discovery appliance. So it's going to go out and actually interrogate the routers and switches and find out what's connected to them. So yes, for audit purposes, this will allow the networking team to understand if they've got any ports that aren't being used that are turned on, right? That's a big audit violation typically. So they can actually go and turn the ports down. They can understand what VLANs are associated with what ports. They can actually make those assignments using the Network Insight appliance. But this report provides a good snapshot view of how many total interfaces I have, what are the port types. Let me, if you don't mind, Bob, let me bring up that report real quick and take a look at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see here. So again, I'll go to the dashboards pane and device interface inventory. It's near the top. I can easily navigate to that. But again, if you are a Splunk person, you can modify this dashboard to what your needs are. This graphic is very useful to Splunk visualizations. Besides just being pretty and cool, you can actually hover over them and get some more detail, summary detail about that data. What are the interface types? How many of them? What are they associated with? So this is all very useful information. See that my total interfaces, and then if I scroll down, look at the device name, the IP addresses that's associated with the interface, the name of the interface, the IP address that's associated with that interface, if it's up or down, and again, the VLAN ID or VLAN names. All very useful information for networking guys.
Yeah, and again, you know, just having those filters makes it so easy to be able to you know, sort and parse and pull up the data that you're actually needing to see. So let's move on. Report number 2. So this is the DHCP lease history report. Again, addresses, audit, compliance, also security. The use case is really around if a device was infected. In the recent past, perhaps a month, lease times are within 24 hours. So what IP addresses has it had in the last month? How would you solve that problem today if you didn't have reporting and analytics? So this just makes it really easy. Right, Craig? What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so it's the pre-can report, just have to bring it up. Now, one thing on this use cases I'll mention, you know, it says lease times are 24 hours. Yeah, lease times vary from network to network. You know, if it's 24 hours, maybe it's a guest wireless network in a building. Usually lease times are 3 to 7 days, depending on what the needs are. But yes, very useful data, especially if you want to understand the lease history of a device. What IP address did this device have previously? Who was another thing that that we can provide? If you're an Active Directory environment, we can log to the map the logged on user from Active Directory, so you can associate who was logged onto the device when it had this certain IP address and what was it doing, right? So if there was some sort of malicious activity occurred at a certain time frame, you can see who was actually logged on. Maybe it was a disgruntled employee that did something, but he left, right? So, but whoever has the IP address now was getting blamed, but you can do some forensics, run this report, find out who was logged on the device. Oh, it wasn't you, Jim, it was so-and-so, so you're in the clear. But it's still useful if you need to do some, if there's any litigation that came up about it. But yes, quick report. DHCP list history is very valuable for a lot of security teams as well.
All right, and then drum roll, please. So this is the top report that we have, the IPAM v4 network usage statistics report. And again, this is a capacity planning report, really, and it helps admins to proactively identify the networks that are really coming close to full capacity. And so this is really one of the most helpful reports that we have. Nobody wants to get the 2 a.m. phone call, you know, stating that there's an issue, and this certainly helps you address that, right, Craig?
Absolutely, and again, since it's built on top of Splunk, you can create an alert if you get to 85 or 90%, whatever you think is a comfortable level for you, to notify you, because a lot of times networks get created and you don't think about them unless there's an issue, right? And you don't want to get that call at 5 o'clock in the morning. Hey, we're about to run out of IP addresses and a bunch of new DHCP clients are going to be logging in, or maybe they're spinning up a new VDI environment and they're going to not have enough addresses. Well, again, this network usage statistics, you can set thresholds for alerts to occur so you don't get caught at 5 a.m. Not prepared. So.
Yeah, and the other thing is, you know, we're just really scraping the frost off the tip of the iceberg, right, Craig? Because there are so many other reports. These are just some of the top ones that many of our customers are asking about when they are trying to manage their protocols. We're getting there quickly, just a couple of more seconds. Go ahead and vote if you haven't yet. Just a couple more seconds. And okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. So, wow, this is really interesting, Craig. So I'm going to share the results out. It seems that about 36% have reporting analytics already. Many of them have Splunk, and some with a reporting tool from another vendor as well. So a good cross-section. Glad to hear all of you Infoblox Reporting Analytics folks are on the call today. That's really excellent to have that. So as we look forward, let's just take a couple of seconds, Craig, and look at a couple of use cases that we have. One is around a large central national bank. We can't, divulge the identity because of our relationship with them, but their focus really was on visibility, capacity, efficiency, and security. It's a large central bank. The focus is really on economic and financial welfare, monetary policy, efficient financial systems, and managing banknotes. This is an organization that is actually in Canada. And so, Craig, what are some of the challenges that they faced and our solution and the outcome?
Well, so they had an aging DNS infrastructure using some legacy solutions that was nearing end of life. Plus, it was very onerous to manage. If you look at the Infoblox solution here, they had over 58 appliances, so 18 DNS servers, as you would, DNS-DHCP servers that were physical, and then 40 DNS-DHCP servers that were virtual. That's a lot. That's a pretty significant sized DNS infrastructure. And without the visibility, central management, central reporting, that could be very challenging to manage. So by having that central reporting and analytics, they're able to easily see what was going on from a central location. They can provide reports to the regional managers so they can see what's going on for the servers for the DNS zones that they manage quite easily. So it just made it a much more valuable solution for them. I think also they saved quite a bit of money, not just because of the ease of management, but I think a lot of it was just the efficiency with the reporting and just the efficiency of the Infoblox infrastructure. They're able to reduce the total number of servers that they had in their environment to begin with.
Yeah, and Craig, maybe one thing that we ought to just mention, I mean, we have over 8,000 customers, right? And we have a number of different case studies that are available online through our infoblox.com website. Craig, why don't we talk and move forward just a little bit to the subscription discount, talk about that, before we run short on our time today.
Oh, okay.
So there's certainly others that we can share around healthcare and utilities, government, virtually every major vertical. And so those resources are available on our website. But with regard to the subscription discount, we did want to share with you today that there is a discount available. It's great for query logging, especially if you have a lot of traffic. And you have to have a previous perpetual reporting purchase, however, but there is no active maintenance or no minimum and maximum indexing requirements. This is an offer that will expire in August next year, but it's a great opportunity if you're interested to obtain reporting and analytics for a very substantial discount. In addition, we do have the reporting free tier, and so Craig mentioned that just a little bit ago, the 500 megabytes a day of indexing capability. Essentially, this is just a license. You can use it if you have a small installation need, but for the most part, this is a great, quick, easy way to do an evaluation. We have a number of different sizes to meet your needs. Up to 500 gigabytes per day. In addition to that, there's upgrades available for highly active grids, huge, especially DNS and response logging, very important. This is available for DDI customers that have NIOS 7.3 and later. You can get that free tier even today. If you want to start using these reports, you could get it today. All you have to do is go to the infoblox.com and request the free tier, and you're up and running. So Craig, just quickly as we get to the next slide, let's talk quickly about an overview. Again, our key advantage is central visibility, right?
Right, central management, central visibility, especially if you've got a highly distributed network, right? So we have the grid master, everything comes to the grid master, and then also, if depending on what your requirements are, again, with regard to distributed capacity planning and performance, you can have multiple search heads, plus you can provide role-based access to different management tasks as well as reports, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the other key advantage, of course, with Infoblox is our deep DDI integration, right? And also the integration with Splunk.
Right. The Splunk integration, we do a lot of the heavy lifting for you with regard to having pre-built reports already built, so you don't have to be a Splunk expert. Out of the box, you plug it in, and there's already some reports that you can start getting value out of. We highly encourage you to go take a look at some of the training classes on the Splunk website. They can get you up to speed on how to modify the Splunk reports. Plus, if you take a look at our community site, we've got some good resources on our community site that the community contributes to, so you can modify and add additional dashboards.
And also, we've touched on the granular data, right, that is available, plus all the reports that will help you deliver a reliable protocol infrastructure, and also around security. All this data is real time, right, Craig?
It's real time as queries are occurring, events get logged. A lot of the data comes from the syslog. You can create alerts based on events that occur. Again, you can create thresholds on the reports, or create thresholds when you create an alert based on the different reports, and then you can have those delivered by email or SNMP to different systems or to your inbox.
And then finally, the ecosystem, which is, at this point, we have over 30 integrations, right? We have literally millions of different threat indices that are tracked. What are your thoughts on that?
So we can integrate with a lot of different security tools. Like I said, SIMs. We can push events to other security platforms or NAC devices. If we detect a new device on the network with Network Insight, we can send a notification to a vulnerability scanner so they can scan that device, ensure that it meets all your criteria with regard to the patching and firmware updates, that sort of thing. And then we can also integrate with other tools like ServiceNow, right? If we want to, if we identify some indicator of compromise, we can forward data up to ServiceNow, or vice versa. If we have a very mature change management board, you can create a ticket in ServiceNow, and that can be forwarded over to Infoblox, so that we can create a ticket or create a task like generate a network, and that a network can be approved by the appropriate managers. All that. We got lots of ways to integrate with different systems, whether it's security or management in general.
Yeah, it's really good. So for those that are on the call interested in next steps, we have a lot of different resources that are available. We have data sheets, solution notes. We're going to be sending you the deployment guide as well as the sample report book, so you can take a look at that. Online, there's lots of videos, whether it's through Infoblox or YouTube. And of course, we have our Infoblox community and our reporting forum. Those are additional advantages with Infoblox. So call us. We have a number of ways you can reach us: by phone, by email. You can log on as well to Infoblox to discuss your network visibility needs. Well, Craig, thanks so much for joining today. We are actually out of time. We did get a couple of questions that came in during the presentation today, which I think we addressed. And so to everyone that joined us on the call today, thank you so much. Craig, thank you. We will be back next month as well, talking about other value-added services. And so for Craig and myself, thanks everyone for joining today. Have a great day.
Thank you, Bob.
This concludes our presentation.